Hello YouTube. Back in the 1990s, I collected information about paranormal phenomena of Lake Baikal and found the account of the former Soviet military officer Mikhail Steinberg about the underwater humanoids sighted by Soviet frogmen in the lake. I got in touch with Officer Steinberg and I was doing my research of strange tall humanoids found in other parts of the Russian Empire and then USSR. I've been doing it for years, guess ever since I visited the shores of the Black Sea and heard a few things, but that was back in 1970s. Later I found confirmation of the incident in the books of the late Mikhail Demidенko, who was the Chinese interpreter for top Soviet military officials. He was later a popular writer and a researcher. I actually corresponded with him years before the swimmer's story was revealed by Mikhail Steinberg, and he told me about his wartime experiences in the Nazi-occupied Caucasus area and the things he witnessed committed by them. Demidенko hated totalitarian regimes of all stripes, and he did a great analysis of the Nazi-German occult fascination and their lurid racist policies. I continued my own research and continuously published my findings about the Baikal humanoids in Russian and English. Well, some unscrupulous people in this field have borrowed my finds, but that's how things are in this world. I ask you to please see my videos in the playlist Mysterious Lakes in this channel about the underwater humanoids, Lake Baikal and other parts of the former Soviet Union. In this video, I am presenting some more of my most recent finds. Lake Baikal is a very interesting place. Let me tell you first about the lake. Lake Baikal has a nickname, the Pearl of Siberia, also referred by many as Baikal Sea. That's important. And it's the largest freshwater lake in the world by volume, containing about 23% of the world's fresh water. It is also the most transparent and clearest water in the world. Its depth is about 5,387 feet. I think it's 1,642 meters, which makes it the world's deepest lake and is the 7th largest lake by surface area. Despite its great depth, Baikal Lake is well mixed and well oxygenated. It is also the world's oldest lake, most ancient, about 25 to 30 million years. And I read recently that in about a few million years from now, it's going to become its own ocean. But that's for other videos. This majestic lake is surrounded by high mountains and is situated in a rift valley where the earth's crust is slowly pulling apart. The rift is active and widens about 2 centimeters, 0.8 inches per year. The fault zone is also active with hot springs and earthquakes. They happen about 2,000 times per year. The lake is fed by 6 main rivers: the Upper Angara River, the Turka River, the Sarma River, the Selenga River, the Barguzin River, and the Snezhnaya River, including many other rivers, totaling 330 inflowing rivers, and is drained by a single outlet, the Angara River. But of course, we have ancient stories about tunnels that connect this lake with other parts of the world. Anyway, Lake Baikal hosts more than 2,500 species of animal and more than 1,000 species of plants, of which 80% of plants and animals are endemic and can be found only at Baikal. It also has species that would fall in the realm of cryptozoology, or maybe study of extraterrestrial sentient civilizations. And its depths were apparently no secret to those who wrote Mahabharata in ancient India. I will not repeat the Baikal underwater humanoid story here, the original one, research. You can see it in detail in my earlier video. Here is the continuation of my research. And if I repeat some of what I described before, please forgive me. Local Baikal historians are more than attentive to the story of the failed capture of the humanoids in 1982. For example, a well-known local historian in Buryatia, Alexey Vanyinko, believes that the ill-fated Soviet divers or frogmen could have really seen something, and these were not seal carcasses. Let me tell you who he is. Alexey Vanyinko is one of the founders of the Ethnographic Museum of People of Transbaikalia. At one time he worked as the director of the State Archive of the Buryat Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic. He was a member of the Academic Council of Archivists of Siberia and the Far East, senior researcher of the Baikal Institute of Nature Management, candidate of historical sciences, and a doctoral degree student. He discovered prehistoric ostrich eggs in Buryatia, found 500 new ancient monuments, petroglyphs, and shrines, found graves of members of the Russian embassy mission Yerofey Zabolotsky, who were killed on Lake Baikal by the Mongols in 1650. He found the relics of the local Orthodox Church Varlam Tchaikovsky, discovered the forgotten grave of the Hungarian poet Sándor Petőfi in Barguzin, and found many other equally interesting objects, ancient sanctuaries, fortresses, and settlements. I will have to tell you more about him later, because outside of this investigation. So, is it easy to disbelieve such a person? In his article, Traces of Real Extraterrestrial Life in Lake Baikal, he points out that local fishermen took the stories about the silver swimmers seriously. So, for example, the fisherman Nikolai Kireev from the village of Kultuk, which is 40 kilometers from Sludyanka, told a local historian that in the 1990s, once together with his comrades, he fished at the Kruglo-Baikalskaya or Circumbaikal Railway area, which stretches from Kultuk to the port of Baikal. I must say that Lake Baikal in this place breaks off to a depth of almost 1400 meters immediately, abruptly at the shore. If you fall overboard here, you will not escape death. Even in summer, the water temperature in such places is not higher than 3 degrees. You cannot swim to the shore, your heart will stop. And in the middle of the night, huge silvery bodies began to jump out of the icy depths of the lake, as if they were playing, okay? The fishermen were frightened. What if these creatures turned them over, their motorboat turned over? They would die. After dropping their nets and somehow starting the engine, they retreated to the village and never fished at the Kruglo-Baikalka again. However, from the shore, Kireev showed Tivanienko the place where it happened. The local historian was also told about this case by other fishermen who were with Kireev. But all of the witnesses, out of all of them, soon only Kireev remained alive. The rest somehow quickly died. I urge you to remember my investigation of the Kamchatka incident at the lake and what happened to the fishermen, and a few others in my book, Russia's USO Secrets as well. Anyway, it is known that the story of Tivanienko was taken seriously by researchers who studied Lake Baikal in 2008-2009 on the deep sea vehicle Mir, and you will find out a little bit more about this. Tivanienko was on an expedition, and he went down to the Lake Baikal himself. According to him, it happened in the place where the military divers just collided with the swimmers. However, he says the encounter did not happen at that time. By the way, Demidенko met some local fishermen too in 1986, and they told him of the incident that took place in 1982. Again, you will find this in my earlier video, and I have the books where Demidенko described it. It's incredible. I mean, this was a chance discovery. According to Tivanienko, the specialist of the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia with whom he spoke, not only took the story of the fishermen seriously, but also confirmed that the tragedy in 1982 really took place. And Vanyinko recalled that in that distant year, he himself met the military on Lake Baikal in the Barguzin Bay. When asked what they're doing here, the soldiers answered evasively. They say they study the depths of the reservoir because scientists, limnologists know far from everything about its underwater life. The words of the local historian are indirectly confirmed by the author of the book Sailors of Lake Baikal, Alexander Kolotillo, who speaks of an unusual surge of interest in Lake Baikal since 1960s. Then geographers and cartographers appeared on the shores of the lake again, and the waters of the lake began to be visited by research vessels. Well, China is not far away too, so they had their own strategic and defense interests in the Soviet Union, especially during, there was a conflict in 1969 between Communist China and Communist USSR. Anyway, Lake Baikal was of great interest and has tremendous story, paranormal history. The local historian admits that there are many strange phenomena on Lake Baikal. There is a glow from the depths, and there are blood-curdling sounds in the willow or the wisps or wandering lights. Over the water can be seen if you pass a couple of nights by the campfire on the shore. What I want to add for myself is if you pass a few nights there, I hope the red fog does not envelop you, and that's a horrible crimson fog brought about by fiery sphere, and I mentioned it in my earlier videos. There's a lot about Lake Baikal. I've studied for years too, and I want to bring more information. It's an incredible place. Anyway, Vanyinko himself saw a UFO on the lake 3 times. Once from the window of his own dacha country house. At the Boyar station, it was a huge white ball on the surface of the lake. It didn't move or drift, and it didn't look like a gas outburst. The second time was on a warm summer evening in Tango. Something small and black fell from the sky at high speed. It was supposed to fall into the lake, but before it reached the surface of the water a few meters, it abruptly changed its trajectory and flew over the Lake Baikal. The local historian and his companions, about 10 people, expected that the object would now crash into the fishing boats, but suddenly it disappeared as if it had never been. And while walking along the Circumbaikal Railway, Vanyinko once saw a cigar-shaped object of silver-orange color, which flew out from the Tunka Valley, flew over the surface of Lake Baikal, and retreated to the Hamar Daban Bridge. The local historian defined its dimensions as 200 meters in length and about 50 meters in width. Over Lake Baikal, a UFO released 3 spherical objects that flew apart. Later, Vanyinko learned that the same object was seen over Ulan-Ude. I've described a few objects like that over Siberia, but that goes back in 1953, and what was reported by the Soviet Naval Counterintelligence over the Western Pacific Ocean in 1979. Now listen to this. In the old archives, the local historian found 2 amazing documents. First, he discovered that a similar object appeared over Lake Baikal in 1909. It was seen on the Trans-Baikal Railway. The object was moving towards Lake Baikal. Now, about the swimmers. Vanyinko found a story from a century ago by a Tobolsk peasant Kuzma Marokov, who reported that his friend was a Baikal Pamor native Fetcha Tarazana, and said that in Baikal there are pharaohs. One day these pharaohs played such a game that they sank a ship. Then the villagers guessed, and throwing a strong dragnet into Lake Baikal, pulled about 50 pharaohs to the shore. The pharaohs were just like people. They had hands all human, and legs only where the paws are. Here it was kind of fused, and the tail of a fish. The villagers whipped the pharaohs with rods and threw them into the sea. After this incident, the pharaohs went to another place. Now, about the history of the divers of the Lake Baikal. That's interesting too, because during the World War II, a part of the Balaklava, that's from Ukraine, Naval Diving Technical School, was evacuated to the town in the south of Lake Baikal, Sludyanka. The cadets were placed in the recreation center railwaymen. A special pier was built for their training, and at the bottom of the lake they flooded part of the equipment on which they practiced rescue operations, laying explosives and sabotage. The winter of 1942-1943 turned out to be fierce, and military divers willy-nilly had to practice diving in extreme conditions. The lanes cut through the ice were quickly covered with ice, too, and the small Russian burjuika stoves, which were heated without interruptions in the tents installed above the lanes, did not help. Only in 1944 the divers returned to the warm Black Sea. But the history of the military divers on Lake Baikal was interrupted just for a short time, already in 1976. During the construction of the BAM Baikal-Amur main line, a division of 12 patrol boats appeared there. Could it be that divers also trained at the base of this division? They might have come from other regions. This is all covered in secrecy. And as I said before, Vanyinko, my acquaintance, the late writer, he was told by the Russian army, not Soviet, Russian army top officer whom he knew, not to get involved in this case. Okay, not to ask too many questions. Now, what I want to add is that Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, too, also descended into the waters of the lake in a submersible apparatus. It's like a mini sub. I would like to believe that this is due to my publications about the gigantic humanoids that exist in that lake, or as they call them, swimmers of Lake Baikal. You know, my articles made a lot of noise in Russia in the 1990s and early 2000s. But I'm sure Putin knows more about these humanoids than I or any other civilian researchers would. Now, for those who want to do their own research in the lake, I have a few words of warning. The FSB, Russia's security service, understands the value of the lake and may not like independent researchers from overseas. There are plenty of other dangers and special units that guard it. With that, let me tell you about this strange phenomenon of Lake Baikal. This lake has a lot of different phenomena. I can only tell you about a few today. About the fear and horror of Lake Baikal, the hurricane wind, for example. And if you go there without understanding what's in that lake, you know, it's easy to lose your life. The natives believe that the cause of the destructive Sarma is the revenge of the Baikal spirits, who do not tolerate even the slightest violation of the rules of conduct or behavior on Lake Baikal. Do not throw anything into the water, and even more so, do not spit, do not light fires on the shore, and do not call Lake Baikal a lake. It's only the sea. That's what you're supposed to call it. Those are three main rules that everyone must follow, according to the natives. Sometimes the appearance of a hurricane wind is explained by the legend of the offended beauty Sarma, whose love was rejected by the mighty handsome male deity Baikal. But it is clear that the emergence of Sarma, or another way she was called, mountainous, has a scientific explanation. The birthplace of the hurricane stormy wind is the Sarma River Valley. The air falling from 500-meter height of the Primorsky Ridge picks up frenzied speed, more than 40 meters per second, sweeps through the Sarminsky Gorge as if through a wind tunnel, and then flies out to the small sea area and the western part of Lake Baikal, destroying everything in its path. Usually Sarma rages no more than 2 or 3 hours, but it can rage for several days. Most often Sarma appears in winter or in the fall or autumn. The enormous force and speed of the airflow leads to horrific consequences. Uprooted centuries-old trees, lost and missing livestock, only a small part of the troubles that can cause a hurricane. People living in the village of Sarma, additionally, they fortify their roofs, tying them to the ground, because the wind doesn't cost it anything to tear off the roof. And Sarma can easily scatter boats, overturn and flood barges, break large ships on the rocks. The danger of Sarma was mentioned in the 17th century by the famous traveler, diplomat, and merchant Everett Ides. In his notes about his travels in Siberia, he colorfully described the winter crossing on the Baikal ice. The hurricane force wind was so strong that it blew away all the snow. The surface became so slippery that the horses simply could not move on it. They constantly fell down. It's no coincidence that the old-timers, they shoot horses and oxen with special spikes that help them stay on the ice. According to Ides, a terrible tragedy can end with a crossing on unshod horses next to not frozen sagebrush, of which there are plenty on Lake Baikal. The horses fall and the wind blows them along with the sledge into the nearest sagebrush. It is impossible to keep them, and in order not to be lost, there's only one thing left: to leave everything and watch the horse, the sledge, and the luggage go under the water. On the account of Sarma, because of this hurricane, there have been dozens of shipwrecks. I will not describe very interesting shipwrecks, but nobody wants to be on one of them, and I will not go into descriptions here. But I want to tell you about some other things about the Lake Baikal. For example, about Bogatyr, or epic hero. At the end of the 16th century, travelers came across a cape which struck them that it was covered with fire, and this column extended to the sky. The wall of fire did not allow people to land on the island, so they sailed away, calling it Cape Fiery. Local chronicles later also mentioned similar phenomena, which were never explained. Today the name is Bogatyr, but shamans still say that he is waiting for his new master. The one chosen by the Bogatyr will be able to learn the rituals of incantation of the elements, fire, wind, and water. Until the arrival of the Soviet regime, local tribes left their baby boys here at least for one night, so that they would live long and gain physical strength. Lake Baikal has its own lake, which can compete with Loch Ness in Scotland. This lake is called Shara Nur. It is home to the giant yellow snake Sharakaya, according to local residents. The snake is very dangerous. Every year dozens of people disappear on that lake, and search expeditions did not give any results. Once a group of researchers ventured to the bottom of Shara Nur, they found out that the lake is connected to Lake Baikal by a network of underground tunnels in which snakes can hide. Fishermen confirmed the scientists' guesses. They often hear sounds similar to groans and growls from the depths of the waters. What I'm trying to tell you is be very careful. There are areas of Russia I described that are fascinating, but either you have to know local people and you have to make sure that the government does not prevent you from going where you're not supposed to go. Yes, visit the lake as a tourist. Don't spoil it as some tourists have been doing. And of course, we hope that it doesn't become contaminated by chemicals, as some responsible enterprises have been doing. But don't get involved into research if you don't know what you're doing. Just know there was a brief news item in a local Baikal publication in 2018. In the Baikal Search and Rescue Squad at the base in the Irkutsk region There are exercises of diving specialists and doctors. During the training, they had to pass the examination of the Central Diving Commission for admission and work as intended. The training camp brought together diving specialists and doctors from the Russian federal detachments, subjects and invited guests from various organizations. Suppliers of diving equipment, scientific organizations, and developers of diving equipment, and specialists from Buryatia. Now, I am sure that the Russian Navy Spetsnaz was also present on the Lake Baikal training. We will return to the Lake Baikal shores in the future videos, but there is so much more to tell about the paranormal Russia and Eurasia, and I'll cover those subjects. I ask you, if you can help my research, please do so. Look at the links in the description to this video. Thank you for your attention. Please tell others to subscribe to my channel. If you can, please promote it, because I want more people to know what's going on in Russia and Central Asia and other parts of Eurasia.